Hello dear viewers, my name is Nino and you're watching Nino's product reviews, and today we're going to take a closer look at the Doogee Mix. This phone is actually available in two different versions, one with 4GB of RAM and one with 6GB of RAM. Now I have opted for the 6GB of RAM because the difference in price is really small, and I personally think that it's just better to get 2GB for 20 bucks rather than, save 20 bucks and have 2GB of RAM less. So let's start with the hardware. As always, according to Doogee, we have a Helio P25 inside this device, which is an 8-core processor. The GPU is a Mali T880. Battery should be 3380 milliamperes, and we have 6GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage, or ROM as we may know it. Two cameras at the back of the device. One is 16 megapixel, the other is supposed to be 8 megapixel. Then we have a front camera with 5 megapixel. Of course, we have a device which can support 2 SIM cards. However, you have to opt out of either one SIM card plus micro SD card or 2 SIM cards. In my particular case, I find 64 gigs to be more than enough, so I'm actually going to use this device with 2 SIM cards and no micro SD card. I find that to be a very acceptable trade-off. The display is a 5.5 inch display, 720p resolution, and it's supposed to be a Samsung Super AMOLED display. While it's 720p, I still find it absolutely sufficient. This phone is supposed to be a bezel-less phone, and it does feel quite a lot like it. We have 294 ppi pixel density on the screen basically, and they claim that the screen to body ratio is 93%, which is probably not quite correct, but it's definitely very close to the truth, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Now if we take a look at the phone itself, we're going to notice that there's nothing out of the ordinary here. We have 2 speakers at the bottom, we have 3.5mm aux entry at the top. They do give us a nice cover for the phone, but nice is really the best way to describe it. I personally find it lame. I don't find the quality that good. It's matte. Now the phone itself actually has Gorilla Glass 5 at the front and at the back, but it does take quite a few fingerprints, so if you don't want any fingerprints, this cover might be great for you, simply because it covers up the glass at the back, and it is nice and matte. Now if we sit down and open the tray on the side, we're going to see basically what I've noticed, that you have the option between 2 nano SIM cards. So nano SIM are the smallest ones. You really gotta have a card that is either cut out or you're gonna have to manually cut it yourself. While this is always something that people advise against, I've cut cards with normal scissors several times into this size. It's a bit of a pain, but it's absolutely doable. Now Doogee is nothing if not thorough when it comes to their software updates. I've heard that they had problems at first with their operation system and that there were some minor errors and bugs. They have been cleared because I don't see any bugs on the software side right now, and as you can see, you can download wireless updates, so you don't have to do anything manually, which is always nice. It just goes with one click, just as if you had a standard Android device. Now this Android device, I'm not calling exactly standard simply because we do have small modifications on the phone, so it looks a bit different from what you would see, for example, in a Google phone, but the modifications are minor. I will show you them individually. First of all, I want to see how fast this device actually is, so I ran it through Antutu and we got over 61,551 points. This is, however, where I am starting to wonder how come the points are not more, since this is supposed to be a Helio P25, but the points indicate that it's actually Helio P20, and this is one of the things that I will want to address a bit later. But yes, you've probably noticed it. This is actually a phone with a P20 inside. All of them are like that. It's not just mine. The manufacturer has just given us wrong information, but I will get to that because unfortunately that's not the only part at which we are being deceived. Now I also want to mention that this is something that is quite usual with the Chinese phones, so you always have to inform yourself a lot. Still, with over 61,000, we have enough power under the hood of this phone to pretty much manage anything, including really graphically intensive games, pretty much everything. If we take a look at the UI of the phone, you'll see we have this circle on the side. We have various functions which I'm showing here. They might be useful, but for me they're more annoying than anything else, so I will end up disabling them, and I'll show you how to do that. But first, here you can change the appearance of your launcher. Of course, if you don't like the launcher, you can just download a different launcher from the App Store. Many people do that, while still quite a few people don't know that that's an option. But yes, you can just download different launchers, activate them, and your phone's gonna look completely different. Or in this case, you can just download a different skin. This is something that the Doogee has internally available through an application which is up here. As you can see, the phone looks completely different. The icons have been modified. It's a pretty sweet thing if you want to change the way your phone feels. Now when it comes to the display, we have been promised a Samsung Super AMOLED. Now the OLED displays are specifically good because they save a lot of battery when you have black. The black pixels are actually pixels that are not turned on at all, so that means that whenever you're supposed to have black, you actually don't have anything on the screen. I've tested this and I've been very careful. I saw no no backlight, and I can confirm that this is at least an OLED display. If it's an AMOLED display, that's something that we'll discuss a bit later again, but it is definitely an OLED display, so that is good because we actually have no notification light. But the lack of notification light can be fixed with software, and I'll show you later what I mean. As you can see, we have this newsfeed here on the side. It's annoying as well, but the newsfeed is actually something you cannot disable. The other stuff you can disable from the launcher settings here. You can remove the bar, you can remove the little cat hanging off a string. That's pretty nice. But if you want to move away this newsfeed, what you're gonna have to do is just create 2 more screens on the sides, and then that one is like 2 screens to the left, so that's really far and you're never gonna get there. That's how I fixed it. Now, since it's a bezel-less phone, it actually claims to be a 5-inch body while it has a 5.5-inch display. It's not quite there, but it's definitely smaller than, for example, this next to it is another 5.5-inch phone, and as you can see, it is definitely a lot shorter. And when you use the display, when you look at it, it actually feels bezel-less, so that part they really did well. You can even remove the software buttons, like hide them so they don't disturb you, and that really works well as well. So this phone definitely keeps that part of its promise. We also have a fingerprint sensor right at the front of the phone. You can set it up and then you can try to use it, and it works pretty well. I mean, I would have preferred if the sensing part was a bit wider, simply because I have fat fingers. If I position them somewhat off of how it's supposed to be, it's not going to work, but most of the times, as you can see here, it works flawlessly. So it's really fast. That's not an issue. I've been pretty happy with how this works, although I myself, I'm not so much in terms into fingerprint security on phones. Now, with over 61,000 points on Antutu, as I've mentioned, there's nothing that could feel like the phone slowing down. A lot of application in the background, no problem. Graphically intensive games, no problem. Browsing and all the social media stuff, absolutely no issue. So you're gonna be happy with that if that's what you're looking for. And since we have a very nice vibrant display, you can also watch videos and they're gonna look great. So all in all, that's a very nice thing. Now, thanks to the metal and a lot of glass that is used here, it is somewhat heavy, so it might exhaust you if you have to hold it with one arm for too long. Getting to the camera, you're going to notice that the camera does an okay job, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. And cameras are usually where these manufacturers sell, because if you want to compare it to the really expensive cameras of some phones, you're going to notice that those cameras, just the modules, are really expensive. Now, with HDR, it seems a bit more blurry. Oh no, I'm not a big fan of that. And when it comes to the camera, we have 2 cameras at the back, so you think there's more. Now, about the Gorilla Glass, and this is where I'm going to talk about all this stuff that I mentioned before. The Gorilla Glass is real, so they really did use Gorilla Glass. This video is not mine. It's a demonstration video that I have borrowed, so to speak of. It's one of their advertisement campaigns, but you can see that it actually does work. He's nailing stuff with the phone. He's going to use the front of the phone for the same stuff. Obviously, they have a very soft block of wood, etc., but still, if you did this with a phone that has no Gorilla Glass whatsoever, the phone would still shatter no matter how soft the block is. You just cannot use it as a hammer. Now, while the games go, I'm going to address the issues that I have with this phone. The phone itself is an awesome device, and considering the price, it's an absolute steal. It's just great. I can recommend it, but these companies really need to stop doing this. The Chinese manufacturers often lie about their specs, and these guys here lied out of their ass. Excuse my French, but unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, we have an actual P20 in here instead of a P25. Now that means if you had a P25, you'd have around 80,000 in Antutu. Do we need this power? Probably not. Phones are already very powerful. I personally don't find it necessary, but if they claim it, they better back that claim up, because it's not too hard to figure that out. Now, another thing that I really don't like is that we have 2 cameras at the back, right? But I found out that actually just one of the cameras is used for normal pictures. The only function the secondary camera has is when you take blurry shots. They have this special setting on the camera where it intentionally blurs part of the screen. Only then is this camera used. So if you want to take any other type of picture, it's not used at all. So the megapixel information you got is absolutely irrelevant. Only when you take blurry shots, if you cover that second camera, will you see that there's an issue. Otherwise, you can take a normal shot, cover up the camera, you'll take the shot just fine, like nothing else happened. They promise that we have over 3,300, actually it's exactly 3,380 milliamperes battery. In fact, it is a 3,000 milliamp battery. So again, they lied here, and that's something that I'm not happy about. The battery will still hold you for the whole day, but it's bullshit that they lied. And of course, the last lie, this is, according to my research, not a Super AMOLED. It's still an OLED display like I've mentioned, but it is essentially not a Samsung Super AMOLED. Now, apparently the patterns under a microscope are different. I've seen pictures, I've compared. It's definitely not a Super AMOLED, but it's still a nice color. It's still a very nice screen altogether. It saves battery, so you can use it. The phone is great, but they do this stuff, and I'm starting to ask myself, why can't they just just do it normally, say the truth, and be done with it. In any case, I did mention you don't have a notification bar light on the phone, but you can use applications like no LED. Since it's an OLED screen, it's barely going to spend any of your battery, since only the glowing diodes on your screen are going to be used, and that really solves that problem for me. I strongly advise you use it. And if you want to check out the phone, take a look at the links in the description. I am actually in love with this phone currently. I'm using it as my daily driver, and I think it's really nice. But again, I don't approve of these business practices where they're straight out lying. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.